Henry placed the bet. The horse won, paying 30 to 1. The next morning, a new hand-painted sign was taped to the front of the Wurlitzer. It read, Mystic Mel's Jukebox Fortunes Told Futures revealed, $5 a song, no refunds. The diner was transformed. The lunch rush was replaced by the fortune rush. A line of people clutching their $5 bills and their hopes snaked out the door. A nervous young woman wondering if she should accept a marriage proposal was greeted with Elvis Presley's It's Now or Never. A man on the verge of a big business deal got AC divided by DC's TNT. The interpretations were, to say the least, subjective. Angelo watched the proceedings with the detached amusement of a seasoned sociologist. You're not selling fortunes, Melvin, he observed as his brother stuffed another $5 bill into his pocket. You're selling confirmation bias. People hear what they want to hear. Pipe down and prep the onions, you philosopher Mel grunted happily, counting his earnings. The chaos reached its zenith with the arrival of a man everyone knew as Sharky, a local gambler whose temper was as short as his list of creditors was long. He slapped a $100 bill on the counter, his last $100 in the world. All right, jukebox, he growled his voice, a low rumble that silenced the diner. I got a seat at a high-stakes poker game tonight. All or nothing. Tell me what to do. He fed $5 into the machine. The diner held its breath. The jukebox clicked word, and then Kenny Rogers' familiar gravelly voice filled the room. You've got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em. Sharky's face broke into a grin. He saw it as a clear sign, a divine endorsement of his plan. He strode out of the diner, a man on a mission from a musical god. He returned 3 hours later, his face a thundercloud. He had lost everything. That thing's a fraud, he roared, pointing a trembling finger at the jukebox. He looked ready to tear the machine apart with his bare hands. Just as he lunged, the diner door opened and the strange, quiet repairman walked in. Forgot my thermal resistor, he said, looking around. He saw the scene of impending violence and raised an eyebrow. What did you do to my jukebox? Mel demanded. It's supposed to be psychic, and it just cost this gentleman $100. The repairman blinked. Psychic Eye just rewired the receiver. It was cheaper than replacing the selector mechanism. It's patched into the live feed from K-Dust, the local classic rock station. It's just playing whatever the DJ plays. The revelation hung in the air, a perfect final chord to the symphony of absurdity. The jukebox wasn't mystic, it was a radio. Sharky stared, his anger deflating into a weary, profound foolishness. Without a word, he turned and walked out. Mel spent the rest of the afternoon issuing refunds. By closing time, the diner was quiet again. The jukebox returned to its usual silent state. You know, Alice said as she wiped down the counter for a minute there, I think we all wanted to believe it. Hope is a powerful commodity, Melvin Angelo said, drying a glass. Too bad you can't give refunds for it. Mel just grunted, but as he turned off the lights, he paused in front of the dark, silent jukebox. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a quarter, and slid it into the slot. Nothing happened. He sighed a sound of both disappointment and relief, and for the first time all day, the silence felt just right. Part 13, The Health Scare. The rumor arrived at Mel's diner the way most news did, delivered by a gossiping mailman and seasoned with a healthy dose of apocalyptic dread. A new health inspector was in town, but this wasn't just any inspector. This was a man known only as the Colonel, a legendary figure in the Arizona restaurant community, a man who was said to inspect kitchens with a white glove and a military stopwatch, a man who could find a health code violation on a brand new hermetically sealed salt shaker. To Mel Sharples, this was not a routine inspection. This was his D-Day. The Colonel is coming, he announced to the diner, his voice carrying the same panicked urgency as Paul Revere's. Man your stations, this is not a drill. His announcement was met with a collective groan. They had survived burglars, swindlers, and food critics, but the thought of a health inspection, particularly one conducted by a man with a fearsome military-style nickname, sent a special kind of terror through the diner. Mel's fear manifested as a frantic, misguided cleaning frenzy. He saw health code violations in every corner, every shadow, every speck of dust that dared to dance in a sunbeam. He declared a state of emergency, which mostly involved him shouting at everyone to scrub something, anything. As always, the staff responded to the crisis in their own unique ways, their efforts a chaotic and contradictory mess. Vera, still haunted by the fiery demise of her Gorman guide to greaseless operations, saw this as her chance at redemption. She arrived the next morning armed with a spray bottle of what she called super sanitizer, a homemade concoction of vinegar, lemon juice, and for some reason, lavender oil. She began spraying everything in sight, the counters, the menus, the money in the cash register. Germs are the invisible enemy, she declared, her eyes wide with the zeal of a true believer. And I am the first line of defense. Angelo, whose memories of health inspections involved teams of professionals in hazmat suits, was appalled by the casual chaos of his brother's operation. Melvin, this isn't about surface cleanliness, he argued, gesturing at the ancient grease-caked ventilation hood above the grill. It's about systemic hygiene. We need to degrease the entire kitchen, sanitize the walk-in, and for the love of God, throw out that jar of pickles that I am convinced is sentient. Jolene, meanwhile, put her faith in the power of Southern hospitality. Now, y'all, I'm sure this colonel is a reasonable man, she said, practicing a dazzling smile in the reflection of the coffee machine. A little bit of sweet tea and a warm piece of my mama's pecan pie, and he'll be eating out of the palm of our hand. Alice, as usual, found herself in the role of the beleaguered commander trying to organize her unruly troops into something resembling an effective fighting force. She created a sensible checklist assigning tasks and trying to steer a middle course between Vera's lavender-scented crusade and Angelo's desire to rebuild the kitchen from the ground up. The day of the inspection arrived, and the diner was a pressure cooker of anxiety. Mel had traded his usual apron for a starched white chef's coat that was 2 sizes too small. Vera was wearing rubber gloves up to her elbows. Angelo stood by, looking like a man about to witness a slow-motion car crash. At the stroke of noon, the diner door opened. A woman stood there. She was tall, imposing, with a severe haircut and an expression that could curdle milk. She carried a clipboard. "This is it," Mel whispered, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. "It's the colonel." They sprang into a comically inept performance of perfect hygiene. Mel greeted her with a bow that was more of a cringe. Vera, in her haste to wipe down a table, accidentally sprayed the woman's shoes with her super sanitizer. The woman didn't flinch. She simply looked down at her lavender-scented shoes, then back up at Mel. "I'm looking for the owner," she said, her voice a low, commanding alto. "That would be me, ma'am, Colonel, ma'am," Mel stammered. The woman raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Colonel, my name is Deirdre. I'm a location scout for a new movie, a Western. We're looking for a diner, something authentic, lived in, a place with character." She scanned the diner, her severe expression softening into a look of professional admiration. She loved the cracked vinyl. She adored the humming coolers. She was positively enthralled by the ancient grease-caked ventilation hood. "This place is perfect," she declared. "It's exactly the kind of gritty, real-world texture we're looking for." The wave of relief that washed over the diner was so powerful it was almost a physical force. They weren't being shut down, they were being discovered. They were about to be movie stars. As Deirdre was discussing contracts and shooting schedules with a dazed and delighted Mel, the diner door opened again. A young, unassuming man in a polo shirt stood there holding a clipboard. "Hi," he said cheerfully. "I'm Steve from the Maricopa County Health Department. Is this a bad time?" The real health inspector had arrived. But the terror that should have accompanied his announcement was gone, replaced by the giddy post-traumatic euphoria of the movie deal. And Steve, it turned out, was not the colonel. He was a fan. "I saw you guys on Phoenix Hidden Gems," he said, his face lighting up. "I love this place. My wife and I come here all the time. That chili is something else." His inspection was thorough but fair. He pointed out a few minor infractions. Vera's homemade sanitizer was not, in fact, up to code, and Angelo was right about the sentient pickles, but he was charmed by the diner's chaotic authenticity. He gave them a solid B+, a few friendly warnings, and a promise to come back soon for a burger. When he left the diner, staff stood in the quiet aftermath of the emotional whiplash. They had faced down their greatest fear, only to discover it was a figment of their own paranoid imaginations. And in the process, they had stumbled into a movie deal. Well, Angelo said, looking at the B+ rating taped to the window with a mixture of horror and grudging respect, "I suppose for this place that's the equivalent of 3 Michelin stars." Mel just grunted, but as he turned back to his grill, he was smiling. The colonel had come and gone in a way. and his diner, his gritty lived-in B-plus diner, was still standing. It was more than still standing. It was officially a star.